Welcome to our LinkedIn Live. I am excited this morning because I am joined by the relentlessly helpful John Espirian. Hi, John. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, Laura. Lovely to see you again. And yeah, thanks for inviting me on. I think this is going to be a great chat.
Yeah, I imagine so as well. Now, we're not going to waffle on for ages, are we? We're going to keep it tight, value packed, and we're talking about the insights that have come from 3 to 6 months worth of research, a lot of data, and that's gone into the research report. But before we dig into that, I think a lot of people know you, John, already. But for those that don't, can you just sort of give a quick introduction?
Sure. Yes, I'm John Espirian. I call myself the relentlessly helpful LinkedIn nerd, and I used to be a software and hardware tester and was a copywriter for more than a decade. And I now specialize on helping people get more visibility and understand how LinkedIn works. So I'm a LinkedIn trainer, and I run my own community, and I run my own conference now.
Wonderful. And what a great conference it is. We will talk about that later. Actually, if you read the report, you probably had a little bit of a sense of the event. And there might just be some people watching live today who were at the event. So if you were, do give us a comment and a shout out. And actually, as we go through this this quick chat about insights, it might just inspire a question. Please ask your questions, because John and I are here for anything that might come up. And I'm sure that that will be really helpful for other people as well. So just as we kick off, we're talking about a research report, but because it only came out a few days ago, maybe quite a few people haven't read it yet. And there is a link to it in the comments. And I know, John, you were sent it first of all. And the reason for that is when we had a conversation back in November, you helped to inspire what we were going to do the research about. So we had a chat, and I said, John, we do a lot of research with our agency. We specialize in LinkedIn. And what do you think people might want to read about if we were to make some of that public and, make it into a useful report for marketing and to really sort of show the tests that we're doing? And you came up with a couple of ideas, and one of them actually went into the report. So what made you think about that getting connected topic? What was it that inspired that?
It's just been a long-term debate about what's the best approach to LinkedIn, and ultimately data will tell you the answer if you can gather enough of it, and we end up having opinions about what's right. Should you send an invitation request with a message? Should you not? And everyone has their own opinion, but it's rare to see someone spend a lot of time looking into the real data of what works and what the reasons behind why that might work might be. So I thought it would be an interesting question, because it just gets debated endlessly. And I frankly, I didn't expect you to do months and months of research into getting the data, interviewing the people, analyzing the stats. It's quite impressive, really. So yeah, fair play to you for doing all of that.
Well, there was a team behind it. So, John, thank you for the compliment, because I know from you that means an awful lot. I think I used the word geekify on one of my posts talking about the research report, and I'm honoured that you would see it so positively. So, thank you for that. I think one of the things that has made it a really important question is that LinkedIn, in probably trying to get more people to upgrade to premium and Sales Navigator, started restricting the number of connections that you can send out with a free account. And there was lots of people horrified saying, I can only send 5. And then after that, I have to do a blank request. Is everybody going to start rejecting me? And I think that sort of sometimes the changes that LinkedIn make, I don't actually agree with that change myself, because I don't think it's great for conversation starting. But who knows why LinkedIn does some of these things. But I think the drum roll moment is we do a lot of tests and we go very deeply into it, but to get more volume, we actually partnered up with a platform, Expandy, that was able to give us a lot of data points. And I don't know whether you were surprised at this or not, John, but should you add a note into your LinkedIn request in order to get it accepted, it makes no difference whatsoever. It was pretty much half, the same connection request acceptance rate was coming out whether there was a note or not. Were you surprised by that?
Not really, because there's so much of a divide in opinion. It would have been weird if there had been a definitive black and white answer as to, one of them getting 3 times the acceptance rate of the other. You feel that would have come out in the wash by now, so it kind of makes sense. But it's just interesting that the data is there to kind of back that up. So that then pushes it back on us as individuals and businesses to say, okay, neither of approach is perhaps optimal in terms of getting people over the line, but what feels right to you? And I know obviously there are pros and cons of both approaches here, and I definitely know which side of the fence I fall on, and I probably will not change my behavior as a result of the report coming out, because I think sending people a note and explaining why you want to connect has done me good. It started a lot more conversations. And those are the things that actually end up leading to you being remembered and generating business, I find. If you don't do that conversation piece at some point, even if it's not up front, you're not going to win on LinkedIn. So that's the important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, and actually the research that we did go that extra step that proves your point, which is a note doesn't matter to get accepted. However, the reply rate is much higher when you've added a note. Makes sense, but actually, why are you connecting? And if you're connecting and you don't care about having an ongoing conversation, then maybe you'll get more connection acceptance, quicker, because you're going to be able to send them quicker if you don't put a note in. But actually, most of the time, you do want to have that ongoing conversation, don't you?
Yes, you do. I know from the other side of this conversation, when I receive, because I receive a lot more invitations than I send, I often, well, almost always will go back and say to the people who haven't personalized but look like as though they might be interesting to me to add to my network, and I'll ask them what brings them to my door, especially if it was a personal recommendation, because that matters a lot.
Yeah.
Often I don't get anything back from that. And I think, well, you haven't said anything in the first instance.
Wow.
You haven't said anything in the second instance when I've prompted you. This is probably going nowhere. Now, I don't take the extra step of going, well, I might as well just disconnect with you, because this is just this is just an extra number, and I didn't ask for it. But often if there isn't an early conversation, that tends to be someone I'm going to forget almost immediately, and they're unlikely ever to come back to me. Really, they should have just followed me, because maybe they were interested in my content, but we don't necessarily need to have a line of communication open by being first connections.
Yeah, you get either a sense that somebody is going, gosh, I could do with some new leads. Let me spend a whole day on LinkedIn and connecting to people, and then they get busy the next day and they leave it all alone, or they're not there. I guess that's a lesson in the importance of consistency and showing up every day, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. If you're just turning it into a numbers game, or someone has advised you, you're able to make about 100 connections a week, so go and do that. But if you've got no strategy behind, what are you going to do with those connections once you've made them? How are you actually going to make it a valuable network to you? Then yes, no one's going to remember you or really want to do business with you.
Yeah. Was there anything else from the report that stood out? Because we went beyond the note or not note, because there are other things that can affect the acceptance rates. Was there anything that you think is sort of a conversation starter?
Well, I think I'm always at pains to remind people that the most important bit of text on your profile is your headline. So if you're not compelling people with that, it makes such a massive difference to whether someone is likely to reply to a comment you've made because you look interesting, whether someone's likely to approach you in the first instance, or whether someone's likely to accept your invitation if you do invite them, let's say without a note, but maybe the headline is doing a lot of heavy lifting and they go, ooh, that sounds really interesting, versus accountant in Bristol. Well, who cares? It needs to be more interesting than that. But it's a hard challenge, because you're trying to put on a show in a broom cupboard. You've got a tiny number of characters to play with, so it's hard to make an impact without sounding like it's a gimmick. right?
Yes.
Because that's the other trap you can fall into. So the importance of that headline, I think, comes out in the report. And I would advise everyone watching this to go and have another look at your headline and see if it's as punchy and relevant in 2025 as it could be, and maybe think about changing it up a bit, because that could make a massive difference to all aspects of your kind of LinkedIn experience.
Yeah, I thought what was interesting is we tested job titles, because the default that LinkedIn puts on the headline is the job title. That's why we see so many people with job title and company, because they haven't done that editing in the first place. But actually, if you make a headline, as you say, gimmicky, I would say like contrived, then it can actually have a negative effect. It's almost yeah, making people second guess your motives, whereas there's something to be said about being straight. And one of the things we wanted to test was a senior job title versus a sales job title, because we have found in the past that if you have business development rep as your, unfortunately for all the salespeople that are doing good LinkedIn practice, they find it incredibly hard to get connections accepted. And we knew that we didn't want to tell our clients to put business development rep on there, because it would kill their connection acceptance rates. So a lot of those tests were with me, where I took the hit, and I am the leader of my agency, and but I do sales as well. So I wasn't, I could actually have either job title of CEO or business development rep. And very interesting to see that a sales job title gets a lower acceptance rate to something more descriptive or solution based, and then a CEO type job title. You obviously can't lie about your job role, but those things are really important to keep in mind. It was about double. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, that doesn't really surprise me, because it's one of the principles of psychology and behavior and persuasion, is that we have this natural deference for authority. I know we like to challenge that sometimes, but if someone comes into the inbox and says, I'm a professor or I'm a CEO, you just immediately think higher of them. You can't kind of coded for that since your school days, right? So it's no surprise that those people will be seen as higher up, and therefore maybe have something more worthwhile to say. But yeah, I would always try and play towards how can I make this the most interesting thing, so that the other party kind of pricks up their ears and thinks, that's the kind of person I'd like to get to know better. And that's not just limited to a job title. It's more about your value proposition, and getting that right is a challenge.
It is.
But what I say about this in my book Content DNA really is that you've got to try and make the biggest promise that you can keep, right? So you can't just make stuff up, but you've got to try and set your stall out with being something that is big and bold, that is true as you can. And that's what, I use relentlessly helpful, and that's done a lot of heavy lifting for me over the years, but I do try to live up to it, and it's a big promise. So yes,
You
try
do.
and think of what your big promise is.
And you've definitely helped me over the years, John. And actually your book Content DNA is a really good read. Anybody who hasn't read that, definitely a recommendation on it. One thing that is really front of mind for us at the moment is the trust on LinkedIn. And one thing that indicates trust is, are they connected? Do they know the people that I know? I mean, that's kind of where the real world stuff comes into LinkedIn. And it's very visible when you have a connection waiting to be accepted or not in your inbox, whether you've got mutual connections, and then it names one. So this was something that we dug into. Now, we've known for a few years that second degree connect better than third degree. So we wanted to just go that extra depth. Did you have any thoughts about the results around that?
Yeah, I think it's if someone just lazily mentions a name, I kind of think to myself, well, that could have just been the first name in a list that's automatically populated, and therefore actually there's no real thought going into this. When it impresses me is if someone says, oh yes, I also know Laura, and in fact I saw her last month at the conference, you think that that's not going to be fake. That's a real connection that they've got there, in which
Yeah,
case I'll take that more seriously.
yeah,
And of course, if the person happens to reference someone who I'm actually quite close to as well, then that's basically a green light straight away. So I suppose have a think about who the valuable people are in your network and look out for those people as mutuals, and then seek to connect with people like that. You'll be much more likely to succeed. But just the generic version is, I see we have mutual connections. That doesn't fly at all, because well, not almost everyone, but a lot of people have that as being true. Doesn't really mean anything. But if you can
yeah.
name someone and give some kind of reasoning or extra development in why that's important, I think that's going to be more effective.
Yeah, like if I had commented on your post and then somebody else in your network had also commented on that post, that could be a sort of LinkedIn reason rather than an in real life reason. And I can see how that would be more effective than, and our tests definitely show, if you just pick that random person, as you said, and actually having mentioning that person when it's random is detrimental to your acceptance rate, we found. And just let the mutual connections bit that comes up underneath your headline do the work was more effective. But there's definitely a if somebody has third degree connection, you probably shouldn't be trying to connect to them at all until they become a second degree connection. So sort of hop your way closer to that person before you make your move.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if a person is a third degree connection and they're creating content, then that's a golden opportunity to go and effectively introduce yourself to that person in public. So
Yeah,
via the comments. I'm just a big advocate for how powerful comments are, because
yeah,
then when you do make the approach to connect with them, they will at least know you to
yeah,
some extent, and then they're much more likely to connect. And of course, there is a value in connecting with third level connection, because it expands your network a lot quicker, because a lot of people who are out of your zone, if you like, altogether, will now be brought into it, because that third level connection has themselves got connections, and you might be able to see those people that you wouldn't otherwise have done. So it is valuable, but only really if they're creating content, I would say. And as
yeah.
we know, there ain't that many people regularly creating content on LinkedIn, so it can be hard to find those people.
Yeah, yeah. This is an excellent. I hadn't quite thought about it in that way. I just always just go, oh, leave the third degree alone. But very interesting perspective to about how that grows your network. We've got a question. Let
Okay.
me just pop this onto the screen. It's from Hannah. She says, what would you say is best practice if you don't have that much time for LinkedIn? Is it posting regularly, keep conversations going in the DMs, or connecting with people meaningful? I've got a niggly feeling it's a bit of everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's a good question, Hannah, and it's actually quite a common one. I was listening to a podcast that touched on this just the other day. I don't. If you haven't got a lot of time, I think just posting and getting out of Dodge is not a good idea, because it means that you're probably not going to have the time to respond to comments, to build the relationships behind the scenes. Actually, what's more effective is, yes, building your network meaningfully, and that means quite slowly with targeted messages where you can. But also just doing the commenting. I think it's a lot easier to get involved in more conversations for the same amount of time that you would have spent posting your own stuff, by mixing in the right circle. So finding people who are saying something interesting that's relevant to your industry and leaving comments, because that's a good way of getting more people to invite you to connect who wouldn't ever have heard of you. Doesn't take as long, and also the stakes are a bit lower. you know um if you, for example, this podcast I was listening to was talking about ADHD and rejection sensitive dysphoria. Like, you put out these posts and no one responds because you're not really spending a lot of time on all of this stuff, and it's not a great look, and it can feel quite defeating, and then you stop, and that's not great. Whereas if you're involved in comments on posts that are already getting some traction, you're in an active conversation. People will see that stuff. Some people will want to connect with you, and it's a more useful use of your time. And whatever remaining time you've got other than building your network and getting commenting is, yes, keeping the relationships going via the DMs. It doesn't have to be quick. Doesn't have to take ages. Sorry. I use DMs. I use voice note DMs, for example. So I might be out and about for a walk and just send someone a message, and it might be really quick and easy that way. I'm just keeping in touch with people. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but posting alone, if you've got not a lot of time, I don't think is a good idea.
I think that's great, John. Thank you. I think one thing I discovered, that I was getting more profile views from good comments than I was from posting. And now I do both, so it's less clear, but I've had times when I've experimented with that. And I think sometimes people look at your profile and they're interested, but they don't actually make the connection themselves. And if you're connecting with the people who have recently been on your profile, most people will connect. More people than not will connect from that. So isn't like they've gone to your profile and gone, oh no, I'm not interested, and would never connect with you. And so I would just sort of say that there's one thing, that if you're only going to spend a little bit of time a day, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, making sure your profile does the selling. That it's really clear. The amount of profiles that we audit that doesn't say what your company does, has no links to your company website, and doesn't say who you help. And that's so important, because ultimately that's your landing page, and they're very unlikely to be bothering to go through to your company page and stuff like that as well. So I think that keeping an eye on who's viewed your profile is a good tip as well.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I should have said that all of that is based on having a good home base, which is what your profile is. So many people don't think about their banner image that's at the right to the top, that perfect digital real estate, not having a featured section, which means that you can't show your billboards of the things that you're most invested in at the moment, and not writing your headline well and your about statement well. If you can get those things right, it makes a big difference on how you're perceived and what chance there is of someone actually approaching you, I think.
Great. And so I feel that I could chat with you all morning long, John, and here we are 20 odd minutes in. So just to round off, I don't think we've got any more questions, but if you've got any questions, put them in the comments. Both John and I will come into the comments and answer those as they come up, particularly if you're on demand. We'll come back to the post. But we're going to relaunch this report. I know we've just launched it, but we're already thinking about what our version 2 is going to look like later in the year, because we want to extend some of this research onto, how much does commenting affect your connection acceptance rate and so on. And did you have any, because you were inspiration for the first one, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here. Is there anything that you think is worth a test, no matter how small?
Well, two questions that I get a lot are, one of them is, will my experience of LinkedIn improve if I pay for LinkedIn Premium? And I will say that there are some benefits, but if you think that you're suddenly going to become a lot more visible for having a gold badge next to your name, that ain't going to happen. But it'd be interesting to see that tested. And the other question, which I'm now getting almost every day, is, will verifying my LinkedIn account help me use the platform better or be seen more? And I'm kind of intrigued by that one, because although it hasn't happened yet, LinkedIn has said that at some point your verification status is going to be shown more clearly in the home feed. And I thought, if that happens, that might mean there's a kind of almost like a two-tier system where you can go, or that post is verified, I'm going to actually read that one, but that post is not verified, I'll just scroll past it. So that's kind of interesting. And of course, it then leads to other questions like, well, there's a lot of women, for example, who cannot verify because their passport's in their maiden name or in their married name, and they use the other name on LinkedIn and things around that. So it feels like, is there a difference? And if there is it fair that there's a difference? So that's kind of an interesting question. And we know that LinkedIn are really pushing verification. So that's kind of an interesting one to dig into. And if I were to give you a third one, it's very obvious that LinkedIn is really pushing video at the moment. You know, they're bringing back the video tab in the mobile app, and they're putting this new grid in, and they're even allowing you now to put videos at the top of newsletters, which they didn't before. So I suppose the other question would be, if people were to make the switch to, say, do 50% of their posts as videos versus whatever they were doing before, is that actually going to get them more visibility? Because if you believe the stats, apparently it will. I'm not convinced at all that it will.
Yeah.
So that's another one that I'm kind of pondering. So I suppose any of those questions would be an interesting one for you to tackle.
Thank you. You heard it here first, folks. So loads of, well, John's ideas, but also lots of other LinkedIn experts gather at a wonderful conference that if you've enjoyed this conversation, you would have probably the best conference of the year. In fact, definitely. I can't believe I even said probably. It's so exciting because it's a whole day talking about LinkedIn with other people that really care and are passionate about LinkedIn. So, John, I've just teed you up for a little bit of an Uplift Live promo. And do tell everybody about Espresso and how they can, and the community and how they can join that as well.
Sure. Well, yeah, well, Uplift Live is the conference that is all about LinkedIn best practice. And there wasn't one in the UK. And I've been to so many other marketing events where LinkedIn doesn't really get mentioned, or it gets mentioned in a very, very superficial way. And so I thought, let's get some of the best people from around the world to talk about some of the deeper, maybe more technical or more challenging subjects about LinkedIn. So we talk about company pages and sales navigator and how you approach people, how you run DMs and all that kind of stuff. So that's what Uplift Live is. It's going to be in its third year in Birmingham next March, so 26th of March. If you want to come along and see 8 speakers doing their thing on the Uplift Live stage, we'd love to have you there. So tickets are available. So if you go uplift-live.com, you can check us out and get yourself a ticket for that. And yes, I also run Espresso Plus, and that's what, if you see these post-it notes that are behind me, it's a private community of usually solo or small business owners who are just basically trying to make their online presence more effective, and it's particularly on LinkedIn. It's hard to be seen. It's hard to know what the best practice is, and things change so quickly, and new things get released, and they never tell you that the things get released. So we kind of share that news and say how you might use this, or what challenges are you having that we could support you with. So that's what the Espresso Plus community is, and you can check that out through my website. If you go to espirian.co.uk, you can find out all about Espresso Plus. So yeah, those are the 2 main things I'm promoting at the moment.
Thank you. And I find everybody in the community very helpful. So obviously led by the relentlessly helpful John, it brings a really good, kind community that gives a lot.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I just want to say as well, there are a lot of trainers and people who just want to give you shortcuts. They just want to give you a hack. And I'd rather do the research and say, this is actually what works, or this practice that someone else might be doing, might not be ethical, because, you might annoy 95% of the people you approach. So it's about doing things kind of the right way and based on data as well, rather than just pulling an opinion out of the air. So yeah, we do really try and focus on that. Go Wonderful.
For it. So we will end the stream now. There's some questions coming through, so we'll go back into the questions. And thanks for joining us today. Bye for now, everybody.
Cheers.